first update, let's get some more thoughts from Chris Parry. Thank you so much for joining us. Just talk first of all about the Tory leadership, because we've just been talking to Henry Hill from Conholme. This idea that there are 121 Tory MPs. So would they need a total, a proposer, a seconder, another 8 people to agree to their nomination? So on a technicality, there could be 11 different candidates who would pass the 10 supporters roster. It's going to be whittled down to 5 MPs whittled down to 4 candidates. And then over the summer, there's going to be a load of hustings, and then they're going to appear at... I mean, I've literally lost the will to live while I'm saying this to you. And it's going to feel longer than this. Tory conference in September, they're going to all get to speak to the delegates, and then MPs are going to whittle it down to 2 more, and then it's going to go in a vote, an online vote, or a paper vote to the members, and it's going to be announced on 2nd of November. Do you think Tory voters, Tory supporters, Tory membership would have lost the will to live by then?
Undoubtedly. I mean, it's almost suicidal. People are getting so bored with it by then. One almost sort of yearns for a coup to take place. So that, somebody says,
don't say that. Don't give people ideas.
I'm taking over this party, and here's my vision for the future. I mean, it needs dynamic action right now. People need to be inspired. The membership needs to be energised.
And you can have a debate. It doesn't need to take 3 months.
It doesn't. And you could start that now. And say, right, we've got our candidates. Who wants to do it? Let's start now.
Yeah.
Forget about your summer break.
And it is going to be. It's going to come down to the left and the right of the parties. The so-called moderates, so-called right-wingers. I would say the Lib Dems and the Conservatives is how I would put it. And there's a reason why, when you look at where Tory voters went, the 2019 Tory voters. Now, there were a lot of people who came over from Labour in 2019 to vote for. Well, they said vote for Boris Johnson. It was voting for Brexit, get Brexit done, and anti-Jeremy Corbyn, weren't they? But when we look at what those voters did from 2019 to last month,
they stayed at home.
Well, mostly they stayed at home, and then a big chunk of them went off to Reform UK, and then another chunk, not as big, went to the Lib Dems and a few to Labour as well. I mean, the reality is, you need to get people to come back out. The people who stayed at home and didn't choose to go to another party, those are the people fundamentally you need to get back. You need to inspire them. But you also need to get that massive chunk of voters who went to Reform UK. The right is where it is. But so many of the Tory parties seem to think that a lot of the MPs, many of whom have lost their seats, interestingly, because it was noticeable, actually, an awful lot of the people on the right, supposedly on the right of the party, who, against the polling, appeared to win their seats because Tories did bother to come out to vote for them. There seems to be this view that you win elections on the centre ground. Well, yeah, but where do you think the centre ground is? Because Labour's vote barely went up at all nationally, and in fact, it went down in England. Only went up so much in Scotland it dwarfed it. But it barely went up at all. It wasn't people going, yeah, we totally agree with Labour. It was people going, we're fed up with the Tories.
I think, Julia, quite a lot of it, I'm afraid, is vanity.
Yeah.
People who believe in what they believe, despite what the people who vote for them think. Quite a lot of the One Nation Tories are Remainers who can't get over the fact we've left the European Union. And I keep hearing this in the corridors of power, that they just can't get over it. They've got Brexit derangement syndrome and all these things. So it's their personal vanity that is getting in the way. And
if only people listened to me, then the party would be fine.
Yeah, and of course they confuse, I'm afraid, political getting into office with leadership. I mean, I am appalled by the levels of leadership that are shown by some of our politicians.
And this particularly as a military man, and this is the thing, and this is why, when we know, whether it's COVID or whether it's border control or whatever, the amount of times people now say, get the military in, because this society, and actually, again, that's where I think people like, say, the Tom Tugan hats, although, again, it would be seen very much as more a one-nation guy.
Part-time, right?
OK, here we go. I was going to say, but don't take that seriously, his military.
Well, no, I take it seriously, but let's get it in perspective. He's never been a senior officer. He doesn't understand strategy. He talks about it all the time.
Well, it's not just strategy, it's delivery, isn't it? But that's the thing we associate with the military, is you can't do the BS. You can't do the, and again, as we're seeing with Starmer's government now. I mean, there's a lot of broadcasters, by the way, getting their, knickers absolutely in a twist. They're so excited about another announcement, another task force, or another this czar or that. They're appointing people, they're talking a lot of things, there's another report into this, there's another investigation. No, you need to get stuff done. Then the military is about, you actually have delivery. You actually have to do it. It doesn't count until you've done it.
Correct.
Does it?
There's always a lot of argument about ways and means. No concentration on ends at all.
Yeah.
It's the same in management. If you take take the leadership out of management. You're focused on ways and means. One of the biggest examples of this is the way leadership amongst executives have been abdicated to HR departments. Yeah. It's absolutely ludicrous that you leave it to the HR department to inspire and lead your staff.
But also this idea, again, I always felt this with Rishi Sunak in government. A man, again, I think he did his best in lockdown to get sanity restored. Didn't try hard enough, some would say. And obviously there are big failings in leadership. And there were these sparks of like, oh, he gets it. But you always felt, no, you're basically running the government on focus group. I want someone to be elected to be leader. And again, Keir Starmer is definitely not this person. But someone who says, look, this is what I think. And these are the reasons why I think it. This is the evidence for what I think, and this is why I want to do these things. I'm going to do these things. This is how I'm going to do them. And this is why. And when you judge me, change my mind. When you judge me on what I'm going to do, what I've done, do it based on those things. I want a bit of that. I just want a bit of. I know what I think, and this is why I think it. So when people talk about, oh, they're very ideological, that's a criticism. No, but if you have a coherent ideology based on fact and evidence, that's quite a good thing.
Well, I would call it a coherent strategy. It doesn't have to be an ideology.
Yeah.
The fact of life is what works. I mean, one of the things that I would challenge the new Tory leader to do is say, how am I going to become the party of competence again? Because that was a massive issue, wasn't it?
Yeah. What have you done? Again, people actually don't disagree with a lot of the policies, but you're not doing them.
I said to a number of Tory MPs last year, if you stop the boats, you're going to win the election. It is the only issue you need to worry about. There was a significant failure to confront that issue, or even to do anything.
You told us a million times how to do it, and total failure. Well,
and I do it now.
Well, let's come on to that actually. In terms of Labour being accused of handing an effective amnesty to 70,000 migrants. This is not the Tories saying that. It's the Refugee Council effectively saying 70,000 migrants could be up to 90,000. So there's more than 100,000 backlog. A lot of those people basically were told, because of the change in the law by the Tories, basically you come over on a dinghy, you are not entitled to claim asylum. So they're kind of stuck in this sort of limbo, not going to Rwanda. That policy's been cancelled. A cost of £700 million, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, revealed. It was always going to fail, that scheme. I think the principle of we have a right to send people somewhere else overseas, and the government has a right to decide, not the human rights lawyers. We're allowed to change the law, and the judges and the courts should actually uphold the law as opposed to make the law. But it was never going to work because it wasn't in the numbers it needed to be in. But fundamentally, those people are now in limbo. And Yvette Cooper said, well, we're basically going to allow them to go through their application process. We know perfectly well the quickest way of getting those people off the books is to give them asylum or
Julia,
give them leave to stay.
I know a year ago, 81% of asylum applications were successful through the Home Office. So the best way to clear the backlogs...
Well, they get leave to stay. This is the thing, it's often they haven't actually often been granted asylum, but they're still here.
Yeah, exactly.
What do they care?
But the fact of life is the quickest way to clear the backlogs is to let people in. But you're going to incentivise criminality. You're going to incentivise all the things that we don't like about migration.
I think you'll find if you check more closely, Chris, they're going to smash the gangs.
Oh yes, indeed. Yeah. So the gangs don't exist really. I mean, that's the point. These are very small cells of criminals who operate. They operate like terrorist cells in that respect.
If you get rid of, if you arrest one set of the people smugglers, what happens the next day?
Yeah, exactly. They'll recycle themselves.
But I mean, there's so much money to be had, isn't there?
Yeah.
It is extraordinary, isn't it? But what do you make of the £700 million cost of the failed Rwanda scheme, though?
Oh, I was never a supporter of the Rwanda scheme per se. I thought it was a ridiculous thing to do. I'm a great believer in actually processing people abroad or indeed offshore. One of the big complaints...
But you have to get them offshore.
Well, in fact, you pick them up offshore and you take them to a big cruise liner and you process them there in international waters. You can't
put 100,000 people in a cruise liner.
Yeah, but they're coming in sufficient numbers that you can process them in a tactical sense.
Right.
There are ways these things can be done.
Easy if the Home Office managed to process more than each person who's dealing with this processes more than one person every week, which I think at one point was the backlog. Yeah, perhaps you could do it. You could do it a bit easier, couldn't you? Let's go back actually to American politics we were talking about earlier. Kamala Harris overnight, half midnight US time on the East Coast, she announced in a tweet that she had the delegates now to win the Democratic nomination. There was a question, I mean, it's still a few question marks about that convention to formally give her the role isn't until August in in Chicago, but it looks like they might bring votes forward just to get it all running. She's also now obviously got a war chest, the $250 million war chest that Joe Biden had, because it was a Joe Biden-Harris ticket. But also they picked up extraordinarily in 24 hours $230 million in donations, presumably people who were going, I would have donated to Joe Biden, but I don't want him to run, so that money was sitting there. But the latest conversation is about picking a white man as a running mate to boost election chances. What do you make of that?
Well, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, all the wrong criteria of selecting somebody for high office. Somebody, of course, is a heartbeat away from the president. So that is going to be a problem. If you don't pick people on policies, what they intend to do, you're actually just inviting an identity and personality competition. Yeah. And that's what we've got here. But
it's so irrelevant. I mean, it's just so irrelevant, and especially given that, again, we've had, they've had a black president. I can look. There hasn't been a woman president yet, but that, Germany, Italy, Britain. This is kind of a routine thing. It's not a biggie. And India, not a biggie anymore. It's only America. And we're always told it's about sexism. No, you just need a good candidate to come forward. You get some ex-military top brass woman who comes forward. I'm sorry, I don't think that's an issue. You put up a woman who was the wife of another president and who was one of the most hated figures in the country and divisive in Hillary Clinton. What a surprise people don't vote for her. I mean, it's absurd. But they wouldn't vote for Kamala Harris if she hadn't been put on the ticket as vice president. She failed to be the Democratic candidate last time. I thought it was hilarious that this is a party that constantly goes bleats on about diversity, and and yet again then decided on a white man in 2020. But it should be utterly irrelevant. I don't care what's in the contents of your underpants or what colour your skin is. What have you done? What are you going to do? Are you competent? Are you inspiring? Do you have leadership qualities? I mean, it's not complicated.
I think the thing is, Julia, more and more in our democracies now, we're having conversations just amongst the elites.
Yeah.
The voters are becoming irrelevant. And so you've got these tin ears inside what we call the Washington Beltway, or indeed within the Whitehall
Westminster
machine.
bubble. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just not listening to the voters. They think they're irrelevant. They think voters are stupid, ignorant, uneducated, bigoted. And we're not that, of course, at the political level.
We're not that.
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
No, but that's the thing. The amount of times over Brexit, I still can't get over how many people who I'm very friendly with in the political world, but differ with me on that issue. Who, by the way, a lot of the broadcasters pretend to be neutral on this issue. Give me a break. They're saying, but I thought you were intelligent. How did you vote for Brexit? It's like, how dare you? I mean, and it is extraordinary. And again, the caller we had earlier, Adrian made really good points there about, how could you criticise Kamala as a choice between her and Joe Biden? Why don't the Democrats get that? How bad do you have to be? How big are your failings? How bad is the message you are putting to middle America that half of the country would vote for Donald Trump
rather than you?
What do you? What do you? I mean, is it just because you think they're all big? I don't. Look, I have a lot of very negative views of Donald Trump, but this time round, whether it's Kamala or whether it's Joe Biden, I completely understand why people would vote for Donald Trump. I absolutely get it this time round.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about bigotry. I mean, I think the very definition of bigotry in the public space is when you make a moral judgment about somebody else's difference of opinion.
Yeah.
And that seems to be...
And it must be because you're stupid or ignorant or... No, I have a different opinion. And here's why. Ask people why is a fair point. But it's painful, isn't it? I mean, let's talk about, coming back to your military experience, I mean, you're keeping people safe. I mean, NATO commander, it's quite a crucial job in keeping people safe. I would have thought also being the head of the US Secret Service. Now, the extraordinary scenes we saw when Donald Trump was shot, attempted assassination, thankfully only in the ear, but another man, a firefighter, heroically, by the way, in that toxic masculinity way, throwing himself on his wife to save her. I mean, wow. I mean, what a man. I mean, that is as good as it gets. And two other men also shot and critically injured. But that one man losing his life in that assassination attempt. The abject failures that we could all see within minutes, given that how many people were saying, but we saw the shooter on the roof, we were alerting the Secret Service and the police, nothing was done. The fact that roof was not secured. Yesterday in Congress, there were congressional hearings involving Kimberly Cheatle, who was and amazingly still is the director of the US Secret Service. She admitted that the fact that this man, Thomas Matthew Crooks, was able to fire a volley of bullets at the former president was the most significant operational failure of the Secret Service in decades. I mean, let's just have a little listen to a statement that she actually made, which was obviously broadcast on US television yesterday.
Secret Service's solemn mission is to protect our nation's leaders. On July 13th, we failed. As a director of the United States Secret Service, I take full responsibility for any security lapse of our agency. We are fully cooperating with ongoing investigations. We must learn what happened, and I will move heaven and earth to ensure that an incident like July 13th does not happen again.
When you say you take full responsibility for something in this sort of field, Chris Parry, does that mean you carry on in the job? It seems to me when there's been such an abject failing, and even the handling of Donald Trump once he'd been shot, yes, that incredible image of, fight, fight, fight. His head should not have ever been visible. The Secret Service should have been on him. The fact that you've got agents shouting, what do we do? What do we do? Where do we take him? Where do we go? There was a female agent who couldn't holster her own sodding pistol, for goodness sake. Diversity hires being criticised. Again, this woman has talked about that. Should she still be in her job today?
It's interesting, Julia. I was saying to my clients a year ago, don't expect either Biden or Trump to run for the presidential nomination next November. And people said, crikey, that can't be the case. I said, look, Biden is deteriorating rapidly, and I've never seen such a huge outpouring of hate on social media against Donald Trump. And I said, don't be surprised if there's an assassination attempt. Yeah. And I also said...
everyone would have expected that. That's why former presidents, would-be presidents and presidents have round-the-clock security.
And I think part of the problem here is that the Secret Service in America now, instead of relying on the traditional methods, is relying too much on technology and intelligence cues to help them. They're not actually using empirical evidence to see what is best practice.
No, indeed.
And you saw a marked deterioration in the sort of protection available.
And look, and we've already a bit of a cover-up going on. I've got another little clip I want to play, and this is an extraordinary exchange between a South Carolina Republican Congresswoman and Nancy Mace. And she's basically saying, why haven't you resigned? And asking if the Secret Service had handed over audio and video recordings related to the shooting. Let's have a little watch and a listen of that.
Several hours before you sent it to this committee as being political, yes or no?
I have no idea how my statement got out.
Well, that's... Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th, yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of today. You're just being completely dishonest.
Mr. Chairman.
Completely dishonest.
Mr. Chairman.
I mean, quite extraordinary language, which we had to beep out in Congress. But I quite like the forthright attitude from the Congresswoman. It is extraordinary. This is, when you've messed up like this, you need to be very open about it. There is clearly an attempt to kind of cover up everything that went wrong.
Julia, the only thing to do is go. It's the only dignified thing you can do. Your system has utterly failed.
Absolutely.
Only one thing worse could have happened, and Donald Trump would have been killed.
And frankly, the US would be in civil war right now if that were the case.
Yeah, exactly that. Regardless of who the perpetrator was, the hatred that was being generated against him from political level down to the lowest levels of the public was quite incredible.
That said, he generates a lot of hatred himself against people. Again, but even candidates who don't do that do also face these death threats, don't they? Let's take a short break. And